songwriting. Now, songwriting is a different thing. First of all, I have to be clear. I am not a musician. I play the guitar. I can doodle around on the piano, harmonica, I can do a little bit. I like music. I took music lessons when I was a kid, piano lessons. In fact, the piano teacher used to come to my house, and my mother wasn't there, but the piano teacher came, and then I would sit down and practice and everything else. And then one day she came, and I told her, I said, look, hey, well, I was on the piano yesterday, and I wrote this little thing here, ding, da-da-da. It wasn't nothing complicated. It was just a little melody. And she shut me down. She said, you're here to learn stuff. You're not here to write stuff. And I thought, wow, it really affected me. It kind of broke my heart and depressed me and everything. And not long after that, that teacher was gone. And I remember that moment today. I remember it from then, how devastating it was that she wasn't at all interested, not at all interested in any creative stuff. I had to do what was on the page, buy the book. And even today, I think back and I think, wow. Anyway, there are people like that in the world. But it didn't stop me. It discouraged me, but it didn't stop me. And I took piano lessons again with different teachers. And one teacher that I was taking piano lessons with, or was supposed to be taking piano lessons with, put me on to the accordion. I don't know why. I think because they had too many people taking piano lessons, and they said, we have nobody taking accordion. Put this guy in the accordion room. And I sat there with 10 other kids doing that. It was horrible. I told my mother, and she took me out of there. And so I was supposed to be learning piano. But it was Hollywood, and everybody was learning something. All their kids, I wanted all their kids to be some kind of either musician or actors or something like that. Anyway, that was Los Angeles, and then pop music. I always had a radio next to my bed. I listened to all the Buddy Holly, everything, Ricky Nelson, all that kind of music. That was just in my bloodstream, in my ear all night. I would listen to it really low volume. My mother was asleep, and I would turn it on the lowest volume possible and have my head right next to the speaker of the radio, little white radio that I had. And it was always on that station, it was KFWB, listening to those songs. It was really great. Then we went to Madagascar, and in Madagascar, for the first time in my life, I met a guy who actually played the guitar, and he was totally into the shadows. He was a French guy. I met him through other French kids that I knew. He didn't turn out to be a friend of mine. It's just we went there a few times, and I saw him play, and he played in a band already, and they were playing shadow stuff, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. But I had no access to any musical instruments while I was there. Well, I was only there for about 6 months, and then we went to Kenya. And in Nairobi, I went to school, and that's where I got my first guitar. One of those guitars. It was cheap, I don't know, 50 shillings or something like that. And it had wire strings, steel strings, and they were like, it feels like they were an inch above the keyboard. They weren't an inch above, but boy, they were pretty high, and it was pretty hard to get them down. But it trained my fingers, it trained my hand. I got calluses. Boy, that was a guitar. Anyway, that was the guitar that I took to school with me, and I played as much as I could all the time. And I had 3 chords, 4 chords. Couldn't play it I couldn't play up high on it because the strings just were too far from the fretboard. But eventually I was able to play something, this and that. And then on some weekend that the school was out, or a school party or something like that, we went to a place where there was dancing and music and rock and roll, and they played a song by the Beatles. And I remember it just blew me away completely. And it was the one about, and now I've been distracted a moment. I saw the light go out behind me. It was Paul McCartney singing, and that great bass line. Da 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 da. The way she looked was way beyond compare. How could I da da da? When I saw her standing there, I mean, that just blew me away. I went up there and told the guy, play it again, play it again. It was an album, you know, they played that, a record player. It wasn't nothing else. The record player and on loudspeakers. And then I danced to that thing 3 or 4 times. I just loved it. I thought, that's music, man. That is something. And that's how I discovered the Beatles. I had never heard of them before. That was the song. And then, of course, we used to listen to the top 20 on the radio at school in the evening. The first top 10, from 20 to 11, we could hear when the lights were on. But the countdown from 10 to 1, that was after lights out, so we had to be very careful. But we listened to it, and every week, you know, it was just fantastic. So that was the rock stuff, and I wanted to play everything on my guitar, and I tried, and I did a few things and everything else. And then in the vacation once, some guy said, "Oh, Danny plays guitar," and the guy who was they didn't have a rhythm guitarist. It was a blues band, and they didn't have a rhythm guitarist. The rhythm guitarist was late or couldn't make it or something like that. And this guy says, "Well, Danny plays," and 3 chords, 4 chords. And the leader, who was also the singer, I think he was an army guy, I don't know. He was a British guy. He said, "Can you do that?" I said, "Sure." I said, "What chords?" He says, "A, D, and E." I said, "Okay, I can play those." It was just rock and roll. And he was worried. He's singing and he kept looking over at me to make sure I had the right chords. But I played those chords, and I don't know how many songs, but they were all the same. And so I got through that evening, and he was relieved that I didn't play some horrible chord in the middle of everything. Yeah, and that was my first experience with that. Then after school, I went down to South Africa, and I wanted to go surfing in Durban. And when I was down there, of course, I met musicians, and there was a big music scene. It was really heavy in Durban. There were lots of clubs, and there were lots of bands. And the Birds came to Durban to play. I could hear them through the walls of it was a city hall or something, like a concert hall in the middle of the city, and you could hear them through the walls. They were just fantastic. Couldn't afford to go and see them, but I could hear them. Yeah, and so I started writing songs there, and I wrote some songs, and then there was a band called The Third Eye, very popular band, and they invited me to their place, and I played the songs I had, and they took 3 of the songs, and they played them, I mean, really well. They were real musicians, They had an organist, and she was really great, and they played my songs, and they played them on stage, and I was like blown away. I was there, like, that's mine. So, and then there was another band, Village Green. They wanted some of my songs, and I had songs for them. And then I left. I had my drug breakdown, as everybody does, doesn't it? And I went back to Kenya. And that was it. Never heard anything else about that. I don't know what happened to the songs. I don't know if anybody ever played anything anymore. Many years later, I tried to get in contact with the girl from Third Eye, and she said something, what she was doing. She was a professional musician. She was a professional composer as well, writing for TV and films and things like that. She remembered, but I don't know if they ever had any copies of the song. I never got anything. Didn't the connection never ripened into anything. Anyway, that was Kenya, and then India, and there I played the piano every day, but I never got to be a really good pianist. I tried to write stuff. I wrote a lot of poetry there. And then I went back to the United States, and in Baltimore I wrote some stuff, but I'm never a good musician. So when I went to Philadelphia, and I made a demo in a studio. I just played one song after another. They weren't great, but they were okay, and I got the tapes. And then on my way to Chicago, I got robbed, and they took the tapes, and they took my guitar and everything else at gunpoint, so in Gary, Indiana. And then I came back. I went to Baltimore, and then I eventually, without a guitar, or just with the few things that I had, I went to Los Angeles because I'd been contacted from this guy I met in Italy, this guy who was a composer and who kind of recognized that I had something. And he came to the United States with his family after I had come to the United States again in 1972. The election of 1972 in November. That's when I arrived, on the election day in 1972. And then he came like a year later, something like that, and said, hey, I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles now with my family, and I'm trying to make it into the film industry, film music. He said, why don't you come out? So I came out. I stayed with his family. I stayed for a while until I got my own apartment. And while I was there, the only thing I did was listen to radio and listen to music and try and write just like they were writing. And he was, of course, a professional musician. He had been a composer. He went to Juilliard. He went to all these things. He was an arranger, a composer. He really knew his stuff. And I was just playing and doing and writing my words with the songs. And he said to me one day, he says, look, you have a choice to make. You can be a writer with words, or you can be a musician and write songs and things like that. He says, you still have the chance to really be a musician if you want to, and go that route. So you have to make a choice, though, because right now you're nothing. You're not this, you're not that. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, well, my thing is words. It's not music. I'm just not a musician. I could feel that already at that time. I knew it from the beginning. I could play the stuff, but I wasn't a musician. I wasn't the kind of guy who could sit there and just play songs or play music. I understood it a little bit, but I couldn't read it. I didn't feel it. Didn't feel it in the sense of like some people do, that they can just play, And so I chose words, and that's okay. I'm not disappointed in that at all. But it doesn't mean you can't write songs. Songs don't really need expert musicianship. They only need the form. Of course, then you need musicians, and you need performers and people who actually can do that kind of stuff to make the song live, which is what I was able to get from time to time, and up to today. I had a lot of people who were able to do that. And then at some point I did it myself. Anyway, so in Los Angeles, I saw exactly what it means to be in that scene. And I recorded a few demos, and they were okay, but still, you have to be a musician. When I went to play at places, clubs, just to jam with people, the musicians there were really competitive. They weren't going to give you any kind of a chance to learn or be happy or do something, just mess around. They were there for a reason. And the reason they were there was to show people how well they could play. And I was there just to mess around. And you can't mess around. These guys are serious. So I realized that, and I said, okay, I'm not a musician. I'm gonna compete with these guys because I can't. Number one. Anyway, so then eventually my time in Los Angeles was finished. I wrote stuff. I wrote stories. I wrote lyrics, all that kind of stuff. Nothing ever happened. But I wrote songs that sounded like the songs I was listening to on FM radio. That was the FM radio time with the Eagles and Jackson Browne, and all these guys were writing fantastic songs. And I wrote songs with major seventh chords, minor flat nine, minor seven flat nine chords, and all that kind of stuff. That was me. And it looked good. Some of them now, I've put them out on an album now, later, stuff from the past. The album was called Raw, R-A-W. You can go and get it. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, Deezer. This advertising. No, seriously, the songs were okay, but I wasn't the performer, and I wasn't the musician who could make them into something that was real. I did some demos in a studio there as well, and they liked the songs and stuff. One, in fact, the wife of this composer guy sang one of them on an album. It was okay. I was happy. I thought they screwed the song up, but, that's just me. They made an orchestral thing out of it with a band and everything, and it was supposed to be a kind of bossa nova tune, just guitar and nice voice. Anyway, that was it. Los Angeles was done. I went to Portugal to be a romantic novel writer I did my thesis at university in literature. It was Sexus, Plexus, and Nexus, the Henry Miller trilogy. And I said, my thesis was Sexus, Plexus, Nexus, and Zen. So, that kind of stuff. And I found a guy who needed a ghostwriter in Lisbon. I wrote a book for him, and while I was writing a book for him, I wrote a book for me. And I wrote lyrics for some Portuguese artists. And then somebody in Portugal heard one of my songs from the publisher that was there. I had put, 6, 7 songs that I had written already in L.A. I wrote more songs in Lisbon. But one of the songs I wrote in L.A., they liked it. And they liked the way it went, and a girl singer got the song, and bang, man, it was well arranged. I went to the studio again. They invite me to the studio to listen to the song. I'm blown away. I thought, well, that's fantastic. And then it turns out to be number one in Portugal, and I'm thinking, whoa, dude, I'm great, number one song. It's my music, and they put Portuguese lyrics on it, of course, and it was called O Rapaz do Cubo Mágico, and it was sung by a woman called Lara Lee. And I thought, dude, I'm on my way here. This is really great. And then at the end of the year, I'm thinking, yeah, a lot of money. No. I got one song on the album and a single, and it sold something like 50 or 80,000, I don't know, which is a number one in Portugal in 1981 or 82 or whatever it is. 1981, I think. It's a number one song. And I'm thinking, that's it? And yeah, that's it. I got like what is the equivalent of $500, 500 euros or whatever, it was that's it. And I thought, I'm not going to get any more. I said, no, that's about it. I thought, Jesus, that's my number one? No money? Where can I make money doing this? And then somebody said, well, you should try England. I said, England, yeah, that's like taking coals to Newcastle. I said, well, the other one is Germany. That's the third largest music market in the world. So I went to Munich. I spoke with people there, and I spoke to everybody, all the publishers and everything. They all said, no, well, we do German music here. Until I found one guy who said, oh, international market, you got to go to Hamburg. That's where it is. And I said, what about you? He says, yeah, I'm from Hamburg. I hate it here. He hated Munich. And so he sent me to Hamburg. I went back to Portugal, packed my stuff, and went to Hamburg. And finally, I found an apartment. I got a place to stay, everything else. And then I went to every single publisher in the city, every single publisher, record company. And I told them, I said, listen, man, you're not going to find anybody who writes better lyrics than me. And eventually I got some jobs because, at some point people want to test you out. So, you sure? You're lying to us? Let me see. Here's something. Do lyrics for that. And I did. And that's how I got these different jobs, especially this record and stuff like that. And then I've been here long enough. And then after the First Affair album, where I worked with these other guys, and I worked with Peter and wrote some songs, and we recorded down in the basement of the publishing company. And I kept writing, kept doing, and eventually I started performing a little bit, and then I started performing, but nothing came of it. Until much later, when I finally got into a country band. And I formed this band, and I wrote all the songs, and I got on stage. Luckily, I was the rhythm guitarist, and I sang the funny songs, and we got a girl singer who was very good, and she sang all the good songs, the ones that needed melody. And it was fun. And that was for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then the thing exploded. It just couldn't, it fell apart. Everybody wanted to do something else. And I thought, okay, well, if they want to do something else, then I kind of exploded the band one night on stage. I went crazy, it was over. Yeah, but that didn't stop me from writing more and more country songs, because I had found now something that I could combine short stories into short poem-like songs, and it was fun. Writing country songs is fun, and it's not easy. It's really not as easy as you think. They sound simple, 3 chords, maybe 4 if you do a bridge, but you gotta put the story in there, and it's got to have a resolution, and it's got to go somewhere, and it's not just truck, dog, and jail or something like that. It's more complex than that. And I have a couple of songs that I really like, and I think are very good in that country genre. So basically, you don't know me, nobody knows me, but it's okay, because what I've been doing all my life, when I write songs that are songs that I write, that I like, I write them because I feel like they have to be written, and like I have to express myself. And so as the digital world arrived, I was able to get recording equipment for home, and to get my own albums out there and into the world. Now they're all over Spotify and Apple and Deezer. It's terrible. But that's where they are, and whether you like them or not, it's not important. What's important, it's the same way that I talked about when I was talking about writing. The important thing is getting them out there, getting them off my chest. And I always had the feeling, when I was writing country songs, I was thinking to myself, I'm writing songs that probably would have been picked up by various country artists in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, maybe the middle of the 50s. People would have said, oh yeah, that's a great song, and they would have done these songs. Not that they're perfectly in that style, but they have this feeling. There's something in there, in these songs, that makes you feel an emotion. And I think that's the key for the country stuff. Now, like I said, a lot of the early songs that I wrote with major seventh chords and minor seven flat nine chords and that kind of stuff, the complicated songs, complex, complicated songs, I released a lot of them now on this Raw album and a couple of other albums. My son told me, he said, you should really just be playing your songs on the guitar and singing them just like that, just you and the guitar. That's where they come out real. And I thought to myself, yeah, you're right, that's how I write them. In fact, a lot of the times, I write a song, I record it, and then it's done, I'm finished. I record it, and then I'm done with it. I can't even remember it. I mean, I like it when I hear it again. I say, oh, yeah, that's a pretty good song. But I'm not a performer. I don't go out and perform these songs. So I don't learn them. I write them, sing them into the microphone or to the recorder, and then I'm done with them because I say, okay, that's done. Move on. What's the next one? And that's basically the way I write songs, and why I write songs, because I feel I need to. Do I still write songs? Yes, of course I still write songs. Are they any good? I don't know. I'm 1,000 years old now. When I'm 2,000 years old, maybe somebody will listen and say, oh, that's not bad. But the way things are going now, the digital world that we live in, the world that we live in now, these songs that I do have nothing to do with production. And everything is production, and everything is repeat of the melody. I go to the supermarket, and sometimes you can hear music playing in the background, and I think to myself, oh, let me wait a second, then I hear it. It goes, the melody comes back like every 15 or 20 seconds, and I think, okay, that's it. And then it's done, and then in between there's drum stuff, and that's it. There's nothing that I can think of anybody romantically thinking about on a nice evening when they're 45 years old on the beach and saying, oh, remember that when we were young and sitting. No, I can't. You can't. There's nothing standard about them. The standards are standards because they live through all those years, the show tunes from the 30s and 40s and the other stuff that was written, and jazz stuff. I mean, da 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 dee da dee da 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 da. I mean, that kind of stuff, where is it? You know, I don't. It's not that I write tunes you'll remember forever, but I write tunes that are tunes and that have stories and that there's something in them. Anyway, that's lyricist, professional lyricist, librettist, and songwriter. The most successful, or I think two albums that I've done that I'm really happy with, and one is the one with Nicky Ryan, where it's just country songs, which I worked with a very good producer and drummer, and that came out nicely. Good musicians, good singer, she was very good. And then the blues album, Evil Eye. That was good. I had good musicians on that, the guitarists. I sang all the stuff, but at least in the blues genre, my broken voice can get away with it most of the time. And really good guitarists, that made the big difference. The way that the songs came together, each song with individual guitarists interpreting it. I just gave them bass line and drums, nothing else, and the vocal line, what I was doing, and they did the rest, and it was really, really good, really good. I was very happy with that. So those two albums lately that I wrote the songs on and I feel good about, and they're available all over the place. They're actually, both of them are available in vinyl. You can write to me and I'll send you an album. For money, of course. But, okay, that's enough of advertising. But anyway, I'll put links and everything onto this later. So for anybody who's interested, and of course, we live in the commercial world, in the world of money. So I'm still making money from the big hit that I wrote the Italian lyrics to. That's over almost 30 years now. Well, longer, I don't know. 85, 95, 105, 115, 35, 40 years ago. Yeah. You know, I'm still getting something. It's like I consider it a Christmas present. The record gets played everywhere, so Christmas present. And I've got a tiny piece of the royalties. It's not very much at all. All right, so just wanted to say thank you very much for listening to my spiel. And yeah, that's Danny Antonelli, the lyricist, professional, and songwriter. All right. Take care.